All right. Well, today I want to talk about internal audit and some of the skill gaps that are there. I've been being told by a lot of different people that there are certain skill gaps either in their audit team or in the people they're trying to find to hire. And so there's certain skill gaps that they're not being able to find, and thus they can't fill open positions. So I've started a survey and I'm reaching out to a bunch of people to get more information on exactly what those skill gaps are. But I've been running a survey for a while. And so actually, if you look in the wherever you're at, I think it's up or down, I'm not sure, depending on which platform you're on. There is a link to a survey that I'm running currently. It only takes about 2 or 3 minutes. And so, if you want to help participate and express your opinion and give your perspective on where you see gaps in internal audit skills, then go ahead and take that survey. Okay. Now, I'm on live right now. So, again, if you're on live with me, you can hit me up in the comments. If you have questions as we're going through, we can kind of have a little discussion here as well. But I wanted to give you a little bit of some of the preliminary results that I've seen. So I've been in internal audit for a long time, a long time. You can see my gray and my white hair, right? I've been in charge of internal audit departments as well. I was the chief audit executive at a few organizations. And I've worked a lot with chief audit executives, coaching them, helping them in things like the Audit Leader Forum. And so I'm talking to heads of internal audit all the time. And again, what surprised me is there's been a lot of them recently that are talking about some of these skill gaps in their own team and in the people that they're trying to hire. So it got me thinking, right? So I started doing this survey, and I'm surprised by some of the preliminary results. Some of them I'm not so surprised about. But some I am. And like I said, the survey is still open. I'm still doing interviews with people to get more information. And when I get that all collected and analyzed, then I'm going to share more of that information with everybody here on social media as well. So why am I not surprised, and why am I surprised? Okay, and you'll see some of this, and I'm only going to talk about probably one of the things today for the most part. And so obviously there's a lot of talk out there about what internal auditors should be doing. Okay. And so I wasn't really surprised when certain topics like cybersecurity, data analytics ended up being some of the things that a lot of people were marking as skills that were needed in internal audit at this time, right? Not really a surprise. Everybody's talking about them, and again, those are skills that not every internal auditor needs to have at least a deep understanding of, right? Not every auditor needs a deep understanding of those things. A basic understanding is important. And then certain people on the team obviously need a very deep understanding of those topics. But some of the other ones were a surprise to me. And I'm not going to tell you all of them right now because, again, I'm still analyzing. But one that I did want to talk about today that surprised me was the lack of risk-based internal audit skills. So why am I surprised? Well, we've been talking about risk-based internal auditing for a long time. So I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. And I'm going to tell you why for both of those things. Okay. So why I'm surprised, okay, is that we've been talking about risk-based internal auditing for a long time. I think it was Phil Griffiths back in the 90s, early 2000s, wrote a book. I liked a lot of what he was saying in his risk-based internal audit book, but he didn't quite agree with everything. And so I wrote my own book back in 2014 about risk-based internal auditing. And I created a course from it, taught it all over the world. I've actually created a certified risk-based internal auditor course now that people can access and get online about this topic. And so, again, I've been talking about risk-based internal auditing for a long time. I've been doing it for a long time. I did it at both of the companies when I was a CAE many, many years ago. And so I guess, and again, I shouldn't assume, but I assumed that everybody really understood what risk-based internal auditing is, and that they were actually doing it. But I'm not surprised for some reasons, and I'll explain that to you. For the last 20 years, when I talk to people, I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing risk-based internal auditing. And then I ask them a few questions. I find out they're not really doing risk-based internal auditing. They're not. They're just doing compliance. They're still doing a high, medium, low audit plan, and they're selecting a certain amount from each one of those. They're not tying their audit projects back to strategic and company objectives. And so they think they're doing it, but they're not really. Now, again, I'm surprised, but I'm also not surprised. And I'll explain some of the reasons why I am not surprised. Okay. The IIA for a long time they kind of didn't get on the bandwagon with everybody from a risk-based internal audit perspective when it started. And what they started teaching that risk-based internal auditing is not really what those of us that were on the bandwagon were talking about. Okay. And that has perpetuated in the trainings they've given. It's perpetuated actually in the certified internal auditor exam. Because again, I taught that. I taught people how to prepare for the exam for many years. And I was frankly surprised and shocked at some of the information that was included in the exam that was wrong or doesn't actually, wasn't what people are actually doing in practice. Okay. And so I'm not really surprised that some people still are misunderstanding what it actually is. Okay. Also, I know that, again, a lot of times internal auditors like to think that they're the expert in risk management. However, I know that what is taught and what is talked about as risk management and risk from an internal audit perspective is not what people in risk management talk about. So there's a very big difference between people who actually do risk management and what internal audit thinks risk is. Okay, now, how do I know that? Well, because in addition to being in charge of internal audit, I was also a chief risk officer and a chief ethics and compliance officer, and was very involved in some of the early stages of governance, risk management, and compliance, or GRC. In fact, I worked with OSEG for many years. I was a fellow with that think tank. I helped to create the GRC capability model, which is kind of a standard framework for doing things integrated from a governance, risk, and compliance standpoint. And so I've got a lot of information and knowledge about risk as well. And honestly, a lot of what I've been taught, a lot of what I know, a lot of what I do is not what is being taught in internal audit. And so often people in internal audit think they're managing risk, but they're not, or they're only managing it in a very narrow area. Okay. And that narrow area tends to be around financial reporting risk and compliance risk. And really, there is no compliance risk, but that's a topic for another video, maybe. Okay. Because there is no compliance risk. They're two separate things. Okay. So, not really surprised about that, because again, a lot of the training or a lot of the things that either the firms or the IIA have been teaching around risk-based internal audit is not really what it was meant to be, and what really those of us that were on the bandwagon and preaching this concept have really taught. And so, again, if I think I put in the comments as well, if you want to narrow your skill gap in risk-based internal audit, I put a link to that course out there. That again, I've been teaching that course for many, many years. A lot of people say it's the best risk management course they've ever taken, even though it was really made for internal auditors as well. So you get a better understanding of risk and how to use risk-based internal audit. Okay, so that's one reason why I'm not necessarily surprised. Okay. Another reason I'm not necessarily surprised is, as I was talking about this with, we were actually talking about it in the Audit Leader Forum. So a group of chief audit executives, and somebody in the room reminded me that it's been over 20 years since we've been doing SOX work, over 20 years. Okay. And so I know as well that a lot of internal audit departments around the world are spending a lot of time doing SOX work or doing work around financial reporting. Okay. That's a very narrow category and only one category of risk. But what it reminded me of, or kind of reset the context for me, is there are a lot of people now in internal audit who all they have done most of their career has been SOX work. Okay. But it's been under the guise of quote unquote internal audit. But really, SOX work is just compliance work. It's not really risk-based internal auditing. It's compliance auditing. And those two are completely different. Okay. So, as I'm talking with chief audit executives, I know they're finding it difficult to find people who actually can think in terms of risk, who can actually critically think, can actually see and identify the risks, and actually be able to create an audit program based on risk, not just copying a standard work program. Okay. Because again, in SOX, it's compliance. You're mainly doing the same steps every quarter, every year. It's the old way of doing internal audit, which is really by standard work program. Okay. That's not risk-based internal auditing. Okay. And so as these chief audit executives are looking to hire people, they're trying to find people with these risk-based skills and critical thinking. And the problem is they're not finding them, because a lot of the people who have been in internal audit for the last 20 years have been taught how to compliance audit and how not to think, how just to accomplish a standard work program. Different skill sets. Okay. And so again, that kind of reset the context of, oh, well, now I understand, right? And so again, the CAEs are saying, hey, if we need people to do SOX work, if we need people to do compliance, no problem, we can find them all day. But if we really want somebody to do risk-based audits, we're having a hard time finding. And so, again, I put information out there about that course that can help you to do it. And so let's talk about, again, from your perspective, if you're sitting there, you're an internal auditor and you're looking at it and you're like, well, I think I understand it, but can you prove it? Okay, because this is one thing, right? Can you prove it? And more than just in being able to talk about it, right? Because a lot of times you don't even get to the interview process without having something on your resume that shows that you get it. And so I'm going to tell you a story. I had a woman reach out a little while ago about agile auditing, because on C-Risk Academy, we have a certified agile auditor professional certification. Okay. And she claimed that she had been doing agile auditing at her previous company, but she was looking to get a job at another company. And so she got the interview and they were talking to her and she said, yeah, I know how to do it. But their point was, well, prove to me that you know how to do it. Well, she didn't have a certification that said she knew how to do it. And so, they didn't believe just her words, right? She needed something more. as evidence that she actually knew what she was talking about. And so that's why she reached out, because she wanted to get the Certified Agile Auditor Professional certification so she could prove to people, right, here's my certificate, right? I actually know what I'm talking about. So the same can be said for risk-based internal auditing as well, right? Adding something like the Certified Risk-Based Internal Auditor certification to your resume and to your LinkedIn profile, right? Because on your LinkedIn profile, people are checking you out all the time on LinkedIn. You don't even realize it. Recruiters are looking at you all the time to see if you're a qualified candidate for a job that they're trying to place. And so the more up to date your profile is with certifications and other things like that, the more likely they're going to reach out to you and say, hey, Jason, there's an open position. We think you'd be great for it. Why don't you come, give us your information. Let's see if we can get you an interview. And so having that on your resume also kind of helps you. Now, again, a lot of you may be sitting here thinking, well, I already understand risk-based internal auditing. Well, do you? Right? I mean, that's my question back. Because again, it depends on who you have been trained by and how they talk about it. Because again, most of the people that I talk to, when I ask them a few questions, they're not actually doing risk-based internal audit. So maybe let me give you a couple of questions here to answer, right? If you look at your audit plan for the year, and again, you may be a lower level employee, and so you don't have access to the whole thing. Maybe you do. I don't know. But usually when I'm talking to heads of internal audit and they say, oh, yeah, I'm doing risk-based internal audit, I'll say, okay, well, show me your audit plan and what's on your audit plan. And if I look at it, in 70 or 80% of the things that are on their audit plan are compliance things or are routine, lower risk or medium risk projects that they're cycling through. Okay, so again, anytime you hear the term cycle through or audit cycle, you're probably not doing a risk-based audit, because cycling audit projects every so often is not a part of risk-based internal audit. It is a part of compliance. And there's some organizations like banks who have compliance requirements from regulators that require them to audit certain things every so often. That's different than what I'm talking about from a pure risk-based standpoint, right? But again, if 70 or 80% of what you're doing is SOX related, is compliance related, is cycle auditing, you're probably not doing risk-based auditing. Okay. Another question. If you look at that audit plan, can you explain to me why every project is on there and which strategic business objective that project is helping to ensure that the risk is covered in the organization? And again, most of the time when I ask that question, even heads of internal audit can't answer that. Well, if you're not linking what you're doing in your audit plan back to the strategic business objectives, then you're not doing risk-based internal auditing, because that is to help ensure that the organization is managing its significant risks. And those significant risks that organizations face are strategic and business risks. They are not financial risks. No company went out of business because their accounting and finance controls were bad. Okay, that doesn't happen. Okay. Anyway, so I've talked here for about 20 minutes now, so I'll go ahead and kind of wrap up. But like I said, I put information in the description that should be associated with this video, depending on where you're watching it, either on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. That there's a link to the survey on the skills gap that I'm doing. And so if you want to, I'm going to open it up or keep it open for a couple more weeks. So if you'd like to go out and participate and provide me with your feedback, it's anonymous, so you can provide me with your feedback, and then I'm going to collect, analyze, and share the full results. Like I said, the preliminary results, I've been surprised, but I haven't been surprised by some of the skills that most people are saying need addressing. And I just chose to talk about one of them today, which is the risk-based internal auditing. And why am I talking about that? It's not to try to sell my course. It's because open positions are out there, right? Chief audit executives, I know, can't find people who have the skills, right? So it's hurting. They're understaffed because they can't find people. And I know there's a lot of people who are sitting on the sidelines who would like a better job. And a lot of these open positions with the CAEs that I know, these are great positions that pay well, right? So depending on, regardless of which side of the fence you're on here, this is a real skill in that needs to be addressed. And so that's why I'm putting it out here. Whether you learn it from me, learn it from somebody else, it doesn't matter. But just make sure that you're actually learning risk-based internal audit, because what a lot of people are sharing out there is not risk-based internal audit. Okay. So if you're on with me right now, if there's any comments or questions, I haven't seen any come through on the comments. So I'm going to sign off for today. There will be more to come. But if you're listening to this afterwards, after it's recorded, if you have questions or comments, make sure and post them below, and I will get back to them as soon as I can. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next live video.